Welcome, everybody, to the Olga's Way podcast. Today, I'm super, super excited to be here at my studio recording with a very special human who I think you are all going to love, and you're going to find a lot of inspiration in her story, which is the type of story we don't hear every day. Most of us don't talk about it if we've ever experienced it, and most of us walk around our daily lives not knowing that somebody next to us may have experienced something like Julia has. So her name is Julia Windslow, and I met her through the Ottawa Butterfly Run, which she'll get to explain what that is. As I did a sponsorship for the run last year because I think that what they are doing is fantastic. So I don't think it's a surprise to any of you that I've experienced many years of infertility and pregnancy loss. And in that process, I've made great connections. And Julia is one of the beautiful souls that I've met through this journey. And I want to introduce her to you guys. So I'll let her do that.
Well, thank you so much. That's so nice of you to say all those things. Yes, we were first connected through the Butterfly Run last year. And your sponsorship really allowed us to reach the bigger part of our community. Like you were saying, 1 in 4 women have gone through some kind of loss. And the Ottawa Butterfly Run really, its goal is to connect our community. It really wants to reach out to people and let them know that prenatal loss, infant loss, specifically for me, stillbirth, infertility, miscarriage awareness, that the community is really, really big. And to come together in an event like we did last year, and again, we're going to have another one early October this year, to be determined the exact location, but we're already planning and looking forward to working together again with you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Julia. So Julia agreed to come here to tell us her personal story. So she briefly just gave it away. She had a stillbirth in 2015 to her son, Carter. And I believe that this is the most painful human experience that a parent can go through. And we're all very lucky today to be listening to her story because not only did she go through that pain, she also was able to overcome this in the most beautiful of ways. And she went on to have another pregnancy. And today she has a beautiful daughter. And she's here to tell us her story. So without me going into more details, I'm going to let Julia just jump in and just give us, a little bit of background, Julia. What was like one day you decided to have a baby, you got pregnant with Carter. Is that how it happened? And what was your pregnancy like? And just bring us up to your story, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So my husband and I knew we had always wanted to have a family. We wanted to finish school and get established. And, everyone has the plan for their perfect life. Of course, life doesn't work out that way, but we had great fortune in that we got pregnant really easily and really quickly. In hindsight now, we were lucky enough to get pregnant relatively on our first go round. We had a wonderful pregnancy. I'm a runner and yogi by nature, and I was able to work out through my whole pregnancy. I put on the standard 40 pounds that everybody puts on. It was great. We had a lovely team of doctors at the mall who took really good care of us. And to be honest, everything was really great until it wasn't. We had a checkup the day before at my OB's office. He used the in-house sonogram. Everything was tickety-boo. I was big. I was uncomfortable. But other than that, I didn't even have any morning sickness. I was really doing well. The following day was a Friday. I still remember it quite vividly. I was out walking. I like to say that I have 3 children, the first of which is our fur baby. We have a purebred husky that, regardless of weather and pregnancy level, wants to be walked.
Yep.
So I was, I feel like you know that.
Energy.
Yes. Yep. She wanted to go walk, so we went out and put my boots on and what of a winter jacket I could get around my belly at that point. And we went out, we walked, and around halfway through our walk, I kind of noticed what I thought were Braxton Hicks. Looking back now, I was starting to have contractions, but I was feeling some pain and discomfort. So I decided we'll head home and take the puppy back, and the rest of the day was pretty uneventful. After supper time, I noticed that Carter wasn't moving as much as I would have liked him to be moving. So there was a couple different foods. I mean, we don't know whether he loved them or he hated them, but carrots seemed to make him do some somersaults in my belly. So I ate some carrots, and he wasn't really reacting the way we normally would. And I kind of looked at my husband, and somewhere in between mother's intuition and not wanting to be completely crazy, I said, he's not moving as much as we'd like. What do you think? And my husband had said, we'll see how it goes, but if it makes you feel better, call the hospital, check in with them. The Malfour has an incredible emergency department where the nurses are so lovely. I got on the phone with them. They asked me a bunch of questions. It was a really clear night in January, and the nurse on the other end said, well, why don't you hop in the car? We'll check you out. We'll send you home, and you can have a good night's sleep. If you're going to be up and you're going to be stressed, you may as well come see us. So we packed everything up.
That's awesome, because usually they don't want you at the hospital. Here in Canada, public health,
yes.
they actually want you to stay away from the hospital if you absolutely don't have to.
Yeah,
so
and it was
a good night.
It was a good night, and we were really grateful for the nursing staff, because we got there and they said, oh, Julia, you were saying he wasn't moving as much. Let's hook you up. We'll do a stress test and we'll send you on your way. Well, unfortunately, when they hooked us up, there was no heartbeat. I had never heard of stillbirth before. I had no idea that without trauma and without a symptom, without bleeding, cramping, that kind of stuff, that a baby could just pass away. And that's really where it's been a long journey, but that's really where my desire to help our community and connect our community comes from, because in that moment, we were completely alone. We had never heard of late-term miscarriage. It shook us to our core and completely surprised us. So we got confirmation from the OB who did the final reading that there was no heartbeat. And we were informed that we would have to labor and deliver Carter, that having a C-section wasn't an option. So it took 3 days for us to labor and deliver, and the staff at the Malfour Hospital were incredible. They put a butterfly on our door, which Ottawa Butterfly Run, we'll chat about more, but it let everybody from the nice man changing our garbage cans in the middle of the night, to the lady who brought my husband coffee every morning, to all the nurses and everybody in between know what was going on in our room, and that our child was going to be born, but he wasn't going to be born alive. So we got to hold our son. We got to spend time with him, and we were so grateful for Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, which is a group of volunteer professional photographers, came in the middle of the night and took family photos for us. Mm. So we have his footprints. We have a full professional photo shoot that was done. My husband and I are huge New England Patriots fans, and they took photos of Carter with what we thought would be his hat and mitts that were New England Patriots hat and mitts to bring him home. So it was really incredible. And then we went home, and of course, this is where the community awareness piece comes from. There was no support from our city or from our province. When we left, we were given a suicide prevention pamphlet, and we were told that a social worker would be contacting us to follow up with us. But when you've had the rug completely ripped out from underneath you, there's not much you don't know what you want, but you want something done. Yeah. And you want to know that there's help out there. We didn't even know, a Google search bar is how we were looking for grief support, and do we need a therapist? Like, what does one do when this happens? We had never experienced this kind of loss.
Let me just bring you back, because I have 5 million questions in my head. Like, you've obviously told this story before, and I appreciate even like that you tell. Like, I'm already in tears listening to this, and I'm sure the listeners are too. But you're going into the hospital thinking my son is not moving so much, mm-hmm. but obviously not thinking the worst either.
Absolutely not.
Your mind hadn't gone into like, it's possibly that my son has passed away.
No, I mean, to be perfectly frank, we had our car seat carrier with us in our diaper bag. I thought, worst case scenario, I'm going to have an emergency C-section. Right. Something might be wrong. Right. So he's coming out, because this would be, I was 38 and 6. So just shy of a week early of my due date. So what could possibly be wrong? Maybe he needs to come out a bit early. Cool.
Right.
I'll have a C-section. It never crossed my mind that he had passed away.
So when they told you this news, where did your mind go? Like what happened to that mom who's walking in thinking, worst case scenario, I'm just walking with my son a week earlier than when he's due?
Completely shattered. The ground completely fell out from both of us. To be perfectly honest, my mind has actually blanked out chunks of this weekend. It went into, of course, after therapy, I can now say this. It went into a very primal protective mode, similar to people who've had extreme PTSD. When you have a break, an emotional break like that, when your body and your heart is devastated, your mind just tries to protect itself. So I remember just howling in tears.
Yeah.
That we had no warning.
Yeah.
It was just complete and utter shock. And I think we were this is again why my heart is so grateful to the nurses at the mall for, is they allowed us to have an entire private space that they didn't bring any other patients into, which they did not have to do. I think we were probably in that space for at least an hour. And that wasn't because they didn't try to get us a private room. I physically couldn't move. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I were just crying, really, just tears.
Yeah. Whew, tough. So then it took you 3 days to deliver this baby.
Yeah.
So you had 3 days to process, like, the shocking news.
Yeah.
Obviously 3 days is not a lot in the emotional world of processing. What changes did you experience during those 3 days with your emotions? Did you come to a place of acceptance within those 3 days? Did you jump into gratitude? What can you remember of those 3 days as an evolution maybe of what was going on for you?
So I think the part that's the hardest is the amount of drugs that are required to start a pregnancy or to start a delivery. Yeah. Sorry. There was a lot of medication in my system, not only just from a contraction perspective, but the medication had to be so high and the contractions had to be so strong that I needed to be on very, very, very high pain medication.
Right.
And I'm someone that my husband can attest. It's a hard thing to get me to take a Tylenol for a headache.
Right.
So that period of time, those 36 hours kind of start to finish, there was a lot of denial.
Okay.
There was a lot of chin up, classic Julia personality. We're fine. Everything's fine. We're going to get through this. There wasn't a lot of processing. And then you mix kind of this heavy dose of narcotics and other medication. And it just was relatively awful. I'm not going to, I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
No, I can only imagine.
It was pretty tough. Luckily, some out-of-town family could come, some in-town family could come and visit with us. Of course, this type of loss makes people really uncomfortable and brings up a lot of old emotions and potentially a lot past triggers and traumas. So it was super hard to have conversations with people. We wanted them there to support us, but they weren't able to come and support us because of it being triggering to other people. And
because of their own losses, or why?
Old past experiences.
Okay.
So there was a lot of that kind of wrapped into it. So it was a very emotional 36 hours. I would say that we didn't really even begin to process it until we were home.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you give birth. And who was the volunteers? What was the company of the volunteers who come?
Now I lay me down to sleep. Okay. So the CBC actually just highlighted them because I don't think it's a service that a lot of people even realize is available.
Right.
But of course, you have this as an option, but we have to fill out a death certificate before we can labor and deliver. We have to plan a funeral. This is all things that are happening to me, and I haven't even had my son yet. So luckily, my mother-in-law was doing some research on our behalf for funeral homes to have our son cremated, because that's what we wanted for our family. And luckily, Tubman's here in the city does it free of charge for these types of situations for children that pass away. So again, information I never would have known.
Why would you want to look for that, right? You're not supposed to know this information.
So we were, as I look back on our situation, my heart is filled with gratitude because I have incredible photos. I had an OB who strongly encouraged me to hold my son, which I did not want to hold him when he came out. If I'm really honest, I was very afraid of what our son would look like. In my mind's eye, I had blue, I had scary, I had not breathing. What came out was a perfectly pink, beautiful, warm baby boy with red hair. I'm sure you can tell my natural color is red. And I wouldn't change that for everything in the world now. So we were so surrounded unknowingly by people who've really allowed our healing journey to happen.
My heart goes to you. Amazing that you can just sit here and tell me that story and focus on the gratitude aspect. I think that's incredible.
It takes a lot of work, and we've been really lucky to be connected with Roger Nielsen House.
Tell us a little bit about their support, how they came about.
There's angels walking on this earth, let me tell you. So we got connected. Again, we left the hospital and really had no local resources provided to us. Which, if I sidetrack a little bit, why with the butterfly run, we have an information sheet that we hand out at all of our events. We're looking to have it implemented in all of the hospitals here in Ottawa, which would allow people to leave the hospital with tangible resources. One of which would be Roger Nielsen House, which I had no idea even existed on the CHEO campus. I had heard of Ronald McDonald House before,
right,
but I'd never heard of Roger Nielsen House, and I didn't know what palliative care was. And I certainly knew it didn't apply to us. Our son had passed away. A colleague of mine at work had said that she was connected with somebody at CHEO, and they were pretty sure there was some grief groups. So if you wanted some grief support, maybe to check them out. Fast forward to me meeting Carol Chevalier. And
do you want to tell people who she is?
Oh, she's amazing. That's who Carol is. Carol is one of the social workers at Roger Nielsen House. I'm probably going to get her title wrong. I believe she's in charge of their perinatal and loss support.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I believe that. I don't know what her exact title is, other than she's amazing.
She's a social worker.
She's a social worker who does amazing things. She runs grief groups that allow families to come together in community and in support and share their stories in a very safe and supported way. But what she did for us in a couple different ways was she went above and beyond that. A grief group wasn't going to be starting for another few months, and she knew that Dave and I were kind of treading in some very scary, unknown waters. She encouraged us to come in as a couple together and talk to her and talk about where we were struggling and how we were feeling. And it was the first time Dave and I had ever experienced loss together. Typically in a marriage, one person can lift the other up.
Yes.
It's your mom, it's my best friend, it's your job, it's this or that.
That's a really good point, but this is our son.
When, the foundation of your house is ripped out from under you and then someone asks you to go get something from the attic, well, that's kind of a hard jump to get to. So for us, it was complete rebuild. And how do we both get out of bed in the morning? Because neither one of us wants to. How do we function? How do we live? And Carol brought us in and she gave us a safe space to talk about Carter. I give her full credit for how openly I talk about Carter and say his name and how important it is to say his name to our friends and our family so that they feel it's okay to talk to us about it, which is also a very difficult thing to navigate.
Absolutely.
She also was super encouraging in terms of put Carter's pictures up. He's your son. This is not a scary secret in the closet. You grew a baby, you birthed a baby, you have a baby, you are parents. And originally that was super hard to let marinate that, are we parents? We don't have a baby. Right. And there was a lot of anger happening at that time too. I've got this mom bod and no baby, and I can't go to the gym because there's the daycare I was going to drop my baby off. And
all the future plans we had created in our heads.
So Carol was absolutely instrumental in helping us just kind of set a foundation. She also set me up with another mom who was about 6 months ahead of me in her loss journey. She had also suffered a stillbirth at 38 weeks, and it was a boy. So she allowed me to have that peer-to-peer support, which I'm sure, within your own community of friends and family, there's certain people you can be really open and really honest with. And then there's people who want to be supportive and want to be a good friend or a good listener, but it's different. You don't quite get it. I still remember the first time I met Kristen. I was having a really bad day emotionally, and she looked at me, she goes, I just don't understand why they put tampons and baby food in the same aisle. And I looked at her and got, oh my goodness, you get it. You get how just going to the grocery store is difficult, because there's constantly reminders of what I don't have and my loss, and why that might trigger me in a different way than a girlfriend who really, her heart is in a great space and wants to help me, but doesn't quite get it on that,
they haven't
that
experienced
base level.
It. Yeah.
So then again, Carol was the reason for that connection, which was super healing and awesome. So Roger Nielsen House has been a huge part of our family, and someone that, or somewhere I should say, that we're actively involved with, volunteering with still, is coming now as a guest speaker to their grief groups which is what started it all. And of course, the Butterfly Run benefits Roger Nielsen House in these specific programs.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the Roger Nielsen House. I volunteer there too, and I do go. I host retreats for parents like yourself, and every single time I walk away, feeling so humbled by how amazing the parents are in these meetings. So yeah, I think that it's phenomenal that having experience that you go back to speaking to other parents. And something I was talking about in an earlier interview for my podcast, we were talking about the notion of how you can be of help to others by simply your experience. But how, like, I am a social worker by trade. Like, I trained to be a social worker, so helping others is my profession. But we tend to think that it's only those people who are in the helping professions that can actually help others, right? Like, we want to say, like, well, you're a professional in that, so you could offer help. But I really like raising awareness of how peers, we can be so helpful to each other. The example was this other mom who was 6 months ahead of you, like not 5 years down the path. Like, she was just one step forward maybe, and that made such an impact on you. And we think of, like, okay, who's going to help me? Or for me to help, I have to be this extraordinary human who is done my grieving. For me, I offer support group to women with infertility as I was going through my own issues, like through my own pain. And I felt that just made me connect to them, because I may just be a step forward than they are. And I think that this is something that is so important. And then to give back to the community, it heals you. I think that each time you probably go to the Roger Nielsen House and you speak, you find that a part of your heart is just being restored, as you go through that. Now, fast forward me to having the strength to say, we're going to do this again. And we're going to have a pregnancy. And how traumatic was it for you to go? Because I know just miscarriage is like traumatized me. So I'm constantly, now that I'm pregnant, I'm constantly checking for signs, because it's impossible not, your brain just goes there. And I teach and I practice mindfulness, and I'm applying this to myself. How did you get there? How did you get from, this is insane, I can't believe this is happening to me, I'm in so much pain, to, you know what, I think you and your husband, we're ready to do this again. I think we can handle it. No matter what, I think we'll be okay. Going through that pregnancy, like, maybe give our listeners some of the strategies that actually help you get there, if you're aware of those. Like, how did you get, and maybe you're still working through that, path, because we're never really done working on emotions or processing. But yeah, just walk us through that process. What was that like for you?
So I have to give my husband a lot of credit. We were still in the hospital with Carter, and he said, we're going to have another baby. We're going to do this together. Don't worry about this.
Yeah, I'm going to cry.
Cry away. And he held my hand and he said, we're parents now, and we're going to be parents again. And it was that moment that we decided, we're going to do this. And this is not going to be the end of our story. So we have Carter. We go home. We go to our doctor, who again was incredible, because as a mom, you have to go get checked up after you've had a baby. The last place you want to go is an OB's office filled with pregnant ladies about to have
Not
babies
kidding.
or brand
Yeah.
new babies. So their office staff ushered us into a room right away. And I said, we want to try again. What does that look like for us? And he said, when you're ready, I'm ready. You come back. We're going to do this as a team.
I like this doctor.
He's amazing. Dr. McCoubry he's amazing. But I said, what does that look like for exercise? I'm not sleeping. I have all this weight. My milk had come in. I was in pain from delivering, with my hips hurt. I know you're not supposed to work out. You're not supposed
what was the weight of your baby?
7 pounds, 10 ounces, 21 inches long. I had to stop and think. My daughter was 22 inches long. Carter was 21 inches long. So like,
yeah, you gave birth to
it's a Thanksgiving turkey. Like it's a full baby.
Yeah.
So your body has to heal too, on top of that, and your mind and your heart, your spirit. But specifically, I was concerned with my body. And he said, do yoga. You can do yoga now. Go home and do what you feel is right with your body. So, again, we were really fortunate. We got pregnant pretty much right away. So once we were given the all clear, so medically everything had kind of subsided from my pregnancy. So of course there's menstruation after you give birth. I had a small tear, so there were stitches involved. So once everything had healed, we were given the green light to try again. So Carter's was born January 25th of 2015, and Madison was born January 28th of 2016. So it was almost within one calendar year that I delivered 2 babies. She was also big. She was 7 pounds, 12 ounces.
Okay, no, wait. That makes you in my books like one of the bravest women. I know.
Oh, you're so kind. But I have to be honest.
What made you jump into that? Like, the fearful mind in me is like, don't ever do this again. Yeah. This pain is horrible, which it's probably because I haven't experienced it. I don't know what it's like to like say like, no, this is going to happen. I get that you made that choice the day that you had Carter. I get that, like that was a decisive moment for you. And I love that your husband kind of just jumped in to be like, I'm going to be the head of this and we're doing this again. Like, just let me make that statement, which is powerful.
Mm-hmm. I think for me.
But right away. That's amazing. Like, I'm not judging you. I'm just feeling like this is amazing that you were so brave, because that's exactly what it is.
If I'm super honest, it's not bravery. I knew that fear would cripple me. I'm someone that knows the longer I think on things, that voice will come back. And I knew that we had made a commitment to each other in the hospital that we were going to do this. And I knew the more time that passed, the more fear would grow. I could feel it happening when we went home. One of the things that the Butterfly Run has tried to raise awareness is that partners don't get grief leave when you lose a baby. The mom gets leave because you physically birthed a child, but my husband didn't get any special consideration. He had to go back to work, as if you had lost a neighbor or an aunt.
That's insane.
Yeah. So that's where some of the awareness on the Butterfly Run Ottawa Facebook page has come from. This Motion 110 is trying to get the conversation that not only have I lost somebody, my husband equally lost someone. Yes, absolutely. I physically birthed.
Right.
But
he had the same hopes.
Absolutely.
To like be coming home with a son.
Make no mistake, the pain was just as real for both of us. So I knew that we had made a commitment to each other and our family. And I also knew that I was starting to become very focused on death. I was very afraid that my dog was going to die. I was afraid Dave was going to die. I was afraid every time he left the house, something horrible was going to happen to him.
Which is very common after a traumatic loss.
And I knew that if I allowed that fear to grow, that was going to be a very big black hole that I was going to stay in. I know myself enough to know that when I allow the negative inner voice to reach, it will come up.
Right.
So we made a decision in those early days that we weren't going to let fear take over. And that wasn't an easy decision to stick to.
Right.
Because because there were still pregnancy tests that came back negative, month after month, and that pain was really real each time.
Yeah, like another loss,
It was,
basically.
and it was another disappointment. At that time, I was still very much in a space where I felt a lot of shame and I felt a lot of blame as the female in our relationship, the carrier of the baby, that I had lost our son. I had not done my job, my biological job. So there's a lot of grief and pain in that, but then also to not be getting pregnant right away. I felt like I was disappointing and letting down my husband again. He would never, ever, ever allow me to say that in his company. He would be like, "You know better. That's not you." But if I'm honest, that's a primal level.
Yeah.
I'm not doing my job as a woman.
I think that's one of the hardest things about infertility. You as a woman feel like you're failing in your job to reproduce yourself, as if it's something that we're doing on purpose, right? Like we feel faulty. Michelle Obama was saying that in her interview about her IVF process. And it was, for me, the first time that I heard somebody verbalizing what I had been feeling and I couldn't put into words. Yeah, I felt faulty, like there was something that I caused that was wrong, even though it's not self-caused. How did you then work on that shame and that guilt? What was helpful to you?
Yoga. Yoga was incredible. I had been a yogi before. I loved yoga. I loved going to it. My sister-in-law and I used to catch up on Friday nights and go to a class. That's what we did.
That's awesome.
But for me, so the biggest one I'd have to say was there's a studio in Stittsville, which is very close to where I live, called My Yoga Town. And they're just such an inclusive environment in that studio. And when I was so afraid to go back to yoga, even though I knew it was good for me.
Right.
Because I didn't look like someone who should be going to a yoga studio.
So your body image had been impacted.
Absolutely. Okay. None of my workout clothes fit. None of my preconceived notions of how I should be showing up on my mat were working. My mind was a mess. I hadn't worked out in a year. I'd obviously been pregnant. I'd now had a baby. I knew my strength was going to be gone. So there again, you can see the talk is happening.
The bully in the mind, just like, why would you go do something good for you?
Right before, and I was having a really hard time sleeping, and exercise has always been a way to let my body rest and my mind turn off. And I have to give Dave credit again. He had said, why don't you just go to a yoga class? Don't go to a hard one. Don't go to what you think you should be able to do. Just go to a yin class, go to a candlelit yin class, relax, and let's try and make the goal for you to sleep tonight. And if you can do that, we'll try something else tomorrow.
I love your husband.
He's pretty wonderful. And he actually went to the computer, got on the website, and he's like, there's one at this time tonight. So I went out, and I still remember the instructor saying, we were starting the opening of the class, and she said, you made it to your mat today. If that's all you accomplish, that's enough for today. Be here today. And I remember I instantly almost started crying. And I thought, is she reading my mind? Like, do you know how hard it was for me to get to my mat today? And she's giving me permission that that's enough.
To accomplish, to feel accomplished by that.
Absolutely enough, because, and she had said, life is hard. And the fact that you caved out this space for you, you should be proud of you. And I thought, she does know. She's listening right to me. And of course I'm crying at this point. And she said, I don't want anybody to look at anybody else. I don't want anyone judging who you were on the mat yesterday versus who you think you should be tomorrow. I just want you to be you in this moment and feel your body right now. That was transformative for me. I deeply fell in love with yoga at that point. And we did a hip opening series, and she turned the music right up and turned the lights right down and said, for a lot of women in this room, this is probably going to bring up something. This is either going to bring up anger, some tears.
Hips. We store all of our emotions in the hips.
Oh, gosh. And I had no idea that for me, I was holding grief in my hips. Mm-hmm. And she said, it's totally normal for you to feel ragey or really cry. Like a deep primal cry, and don't feel bad about it. Again, don't look left, don't look right. Close your eyes and do it. And it was just this space of feeling okay about who I was at that point. And that's when I really started to begin the process of letting go of where I thought my life would be, where I had planned for my life to be. And then as we found out I was pregnant, of course,
Wait, so that class and that practice of yoga, I'm sure it did not happen in that moment, but
no.
it brought you to something beautiful called acceptance.
Yes.
Right? Like, okay, so I had these plans, but this is actually what did happen, and this is
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Yeah.
And that's acceptance, and that's so healing on its own.
And there was another studio that I also loved to go to in Westboro called Pure Yoga. And I had been going to the class in Stittsville quite a bit. And a girlfriend of mine had reached out and said, we used to do this class on Saturdays. I haven't been around. It's really awkward for me to talk to you. I don't know what to do. I can't help you, but I know yoga helps you. Can I take you to a class? Let's go to a class. And I know you really like this flow class. So we went. And again, the universe, she works in mysterious ways because that teacher was also incredible, because that was my first introduction to guided meditation.
Yay!
Which we will discuss another time, but man, I thought meditation was for fools. I was like, come on, people. I'm not going to be a monk in a monastery meditating for 45 minutes every morning. I don't have time for this. And she really introduced gratitude in a really tangible, physical way to me. We'd finished the class and she took us through this beautiful meditation, but she talked to us about how tired our bodies should be and how grateful you should be for the strength of your body. Like, it was just so awesome. So I had never experienced somebody helping me turn the voice off. I had never experienced how much more open my brain and my mind could be once that negative Nancy was in the hamster wheel was turned off.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take that long. I thought this was something that you had to meditate for like 3 hours.
You didn't have to be a monk.
Yeah, I didn't have to be a monk. I didn't have to spend a ton of time. But no, Pure introduced me to intention setting. It introduced me to daily gratitude. Your top 4 in 4 minutes. Just what are the first 4 things that come to mind? So these were all the types of things that over the time of us losing Carter to me delivering Madison really allowed some healing of my spirit and of my energy levels to come through, because we get pregnant with Maddie and my anxiety, it goes through the roof.
Absolutely.
It was really hard. It was hard on our marriage. It was hard on both my husband and I physically to be that wound up and that nervous about the next appointment. You don't sleep properly, you don't eat properly, and then you're emotionally drained. Even though we got great news every time. Her heart was beating. But
so did with Carter, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you're like, I don't trust this anymore.
Well, you kind of wait for the other foot to drop. And when you're in a space where, we share that you've had loss in the past and you're currently pregnant, there's a lot of concern about, am I connecting enough with the baby? Am I not connecting with the baby? But I have to be protective of my heart. What if the other shoe drops halfway through this? I need to be ready for that. I have to always kind of be on guard, but I still sort of want to be happy, but I don't want to let myself be happy. And that never really let up, because we were so close to having him when we lost him. So it in ways, I was jealous of people who had earlier losses, or a reason for their loss, because you could get over that hump.
Right.
There was a hurdle you could get over. And we didn't have that. So that was hard. That was probably the hardest part, was that we had an unexplainable stillbirth. So we had nothing to hang on to. Nothing to blame, but also nothing to hang on to.
It's like, how do I understand this? How do I bring my thinking mind to understand what happened?
Yeah.
Because I think in the back of our mind, we want to understand it so that it doesn't happen again.
Yes.
That's what, like, what's our desire, to understand how things went wrong. Like, this is how we go about life.
Yeah.
What step did you miss? And then in your case, he just passed away. That was his day. And
I think that is so true in terms of control. Right. For me, control became huge with my pregnancy with Madison, but also after her birth, because there had been so much in our grief journey that was completely out of our control. And even with Madison's pregnancy, we had no control over what was going to happen, but I wanted it so desperately. And it just makes it more difficult to navigate those waters. But again, we stuck with our same OB team, and we stuck with the Milford Hospital, and we had incredible people who understood where we had been. We had the ability to ask for technicians that weren't on the job training first day. I don't want the pleasantries of how your day is. I want you to find the heartbeat, then I'll relax and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And the staff were incredibly accommodating. So again, hindsight is totally different than walking in it. We were very fortunate for the people that were around us in the medical community at that time. And they did absolutely anything we asked and everything we asked. But it was stressful. The pregnancy was stressful on everybody involved, in grandparents, work. I think everybody at my doctor's office and the hospital was ready for us to have Madison the day we chose to induce Maddie. I think everybody was a little bit on
Just
edge.
let us know when you want to have this baby. We'll take her out.
Yeah.
And was she delivered early?
We did. We induced early. Part of my... So there's certain parameters within the medical community about how early you can induce by provincial standards. So Madison was exactly 1 minute into her 37th week when she was born. So we induced at 36 weeks, knowing that the next morning would be the start of her 37th week. And the intention was that it would take me some time to labor and deliver. Of course, not really having any basis because of our experience with Carter. It did not take me very long at all. Madison was very excited to come out and meet her mommy and daddy and her fur baby sister. So it was literally 1 minute into her 37th week. So we did choose to induce early, which isn't right for everybody's family. It's a very personal decision. And I can totally appreciate that some people would prefer to go a non-medical route. They'd prefer to go a more homeopathic at-home birth after a loss.
Yeah.
For us, again, it was really just straight fear.
It's what made you,
what made us
feel safe. Yeah.
I wanted to be as monitored as possible. Again, that control piece, wanting to just invoke as much of it as I possibly could at that point. So,
what was it like to hear this baby cry, hold this baby girl in your arms, and be like, okay, you did it. She's out. We did it.
It was so interesting because I remember the first thing I asked Dave is she okay? Because I'm giving birth to her. I can hear her heart rate on the monitor, and I'm still, part of me is very worried that she's not okay. And then she cries, and he's crying, and she's fine. She's beautiful. She's fine. And it was like the whole rest of the world melted away. It was so healing. It was so incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also, my heart knew Carter was with us, which was wonderful. I can't really tangibly explain that to any of your listeners, but he was definitely there. And to just be able to breathe for the first time in probably 2 years that we had done it. We had our family, and she was here. And in that moment, it was amazing. The difficulty happened when we got home. There was, and again, in hindsight, after some therapy, I had postpartum anxiety, which I didn't realize.
Makes sense.
Our grief really flooded. I think we had shoved a lot of it down in the pregnancy to try and focus on the pregnancy. So there's a lot of grief that we were processing. A lot of, I wish this had happened with Carter. I wish we had two. We should have two. I also felt very concerned, which was wrapped up in that postpartum anxiety, about her staying alive. The obsession with death definitely came back.
Right.
Which it also didn't help. I wasn't sleeping because I was really worried something would happen to her when I'm not awake.
You were exhausted, and
insert tumbleweed effect. But luckily, with the support of Roger Nielsen House again, I went back and started seeing Carol after we had Madison. And as such, when we realized that there really wasn't a support fit there for this part of the journey, they've actually started a pregnancy after loss support group as well now, which is so incredible to see. Because again, it's an isolating journey. Not only do people not necessarily understand postpartum, whether they're depression, anxiety, whatever symptoms you feel afterwards. Because again, it's not something we really talk about openly in our community, but how that is linked to grief as well, and how the two, when they combine on each other and you don't sleep, plus, breastfeeding is not the easiest thing in the history of the world. Plus your hormone. Shocking. Sorry if that was a spoiler alert for any of your listeners. Plus, you've got all these hormones. Like, there's a lot of change
so
that
many
just
changes,
hits you.
Yeah.
So it can be really isolating as well. So it was great to have that resource in Roger Nielsen House to be able to pull back on. And then 2016, I began my introduction to the butterfly run, and really was in a space to start to acknowledge that I had had a stillbirth. We hadn't really talked about it a lot at that point. People knew that we had lost Carter, but there was a big misconception that everything was better now that we had Maddie. And we hadn't
really, like, you got your child,
yes, so you must feel so much
yeah.
better. It's okay. We just chopped off your left arm, but you should be really grateful you've got your right arm.
Thank God you have two arms, because you're missing
just
one.
Extra. So I attended the butterfly run for the first time, and again, I was trying to find a bit of that piece of me to come back. It was my first race since having the babies, and I was just struck because I parked my car and I saw two parents, and one t-shirt, the back said mom and the back said dad, and it had an ultrasound photo on the back. And that was the first time that I was like, wow, I'm where I need to be. There's a community of moms and dads without pictures on their desks at work. There's a community of warrior women out there who have lived this challenge. And I want my heart to feel like this is okay. And we wrote Carter's name on a little butterfly. They had this butterfly display at the very first run. And I saw so many butterflies. And I thought, wow, when you start to realize how big this community is, it's a little overwhelming. And I sat in my car and it was raining and I'm crying. And I thought, gosh, I've been a mom this whole time. This isn't just because I have Madison. And that was the first time really in my heart I had started to let go of the notion that I had lost Carter, that it wasn't my fault anymore, which is a long journey.
That's the power of community also, to not see that you're not alone. So all these moms have done something wrong, right?
Yeah.
This has happened to us.
And I find that grief is such a tricky emotion. It doesn't need to be my grief about losing our son. It can be the grief of, hopes and dreams of the infertility journey. It can be the grief of a marriage that you've lost. Because there's blame when you lose a job, when you lose anything, a special relationship anywhere in your life. Grief is just that human experience that really, when you allow people to share and support you, it really does change the way you live your life, for sure.
Yeah.
Which is why I wanted to help with the butterfly run and really increase our awareness and reach out to all the corners of our community so everybody knows that they're welcome that's walking.
But they're not alone. Yeah. Because in my experience, I don't know if you've experienced that, but in my experience with infertility, and one of the reasons I became an advocator, and I almost think of myself as an ambassador because I've openly shared my story, which took me 4 years to do that. When I am an open book, otherwise I would have shared anything of my life with people. And I felt so, I guess I would recognize that in retrospect now, that it was some shame, kind of like, I don't want anybody to know this part about me, as if this was, such a horrible thing. But I do think that sharing allows other people to think, and like the amount of private messages I've received since I openly share my story is overwhelming. People I know and people I don't know who are like, I know what it's like. Thank you for sharing your story. And we don't always know what that, that's not what I had in mind when I was sharing my story. It was mostly like therapeutic for me and raising awareness, because we minimize what that does. But you don't know who's listening to the story, who needs to know about the butterfly run today, who needs to know about the Rogers Nelson House, who needs to know that therapy and yoga are great tools to overcome grief or to help you cope
Cope.
while you're going through it.
Well, and I think these are the types of conversations that make people really uncomfortable.
Yeah,
you know, death makes people really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Talking about babies that have died make people very uncomfortable. And there's a lot of friendships that you can lose. There's also a lot of friendships you gain, and people really surprise you and step up. But you make people uncomfortable. They don't know what to say, so they don't say anything, and they just kind of fade into the background. So I think we talk about this 1 in 4 movement and changing the conversation, but I think just having the conversation changes the conversation. And when you give permission to people to say your son or daughter's name or to approach you about infertility or a loss or something that you're struggling with in your life, it allows people to connect with you. Like you were saying with your private messages, I got emails at work because I went back to work early. Obviously, I'm supposed to be on maternity leave when we lose Carter. Right. I come back to work and then everybody's like, I don't know what to say to her. What do I do? Yeah. Like, do I just say good morning and pretend nothing happened? Does she want to talk? Does she not want to talk? And I had coworkers who would email me and say, actually, my sister-in-law just went through something very similar. I don't know what to say. What's helpful? Tell me what's helpful. Mm-hmm. And that, just kind of echo what you're saying, is to think, I like to think of Carter's story as allowing me to be an ambassador of sorts of stillbirth, because nobody talks about the hard parts in life at all. And there's a lot of hard bits to this thing we call life. And I think the more we can talk about it and the more we can share allows people to feel connected. It doesn't have to be the exact same thing you're going through, but it lets people talk.
And I think you brought up a great point, which when I do counseling for grief, it comes up a lot. And I have to remind my clients, it's not that people around you don't care. Mm-hmm. It's not that they forgot about you. It's that they have no idea what to do with their own emotions and how to be of service, of how to be helpful. And the people who reach out to you had a little bit of experience, so they knew to ask, what can I do? Mm-hmm. I am uncomfortable. I have all kinds of emotions, and it's not even my child. And I don't know how to be of help to you. So how can I be of help? And I think that for anybody who's listening to this, who may be going through grief, who may be going through something really, really difficult in life that people know about and people equally feel this is difficult, just know that you have to give permission to them to talk about it. Mm-hmm. You have to let them know, this is what I would like from you. Mm-hmm. Or just bring it up. I know back in a very difficult life scenario that doesn't happen to everybody, people were tiptoeing around me. They didn't know how to address this with me. And I had to be like the one to open up or to cry in front of people and be like, today I'm having a really hard day. You have no idea what it's like to meet somebody. It is tough. So I'm going, I allow that for people to know. And I think it's important because when we're going through grief especially, we feel so isolated. Even though we may understand other people are grieving, at the same time, we feel like nobody really understands our pain and that our pain is so unique. And then we're looking up to the circles we used to have before we were grieving, and we're disappointed that they're not doing what we want them to do. And like you said it, I came home and I knew I wanted something. I just didn't know what I wanted. Like, what do I need right now? Mm-hmm. I just need to feel better, but how? So it's giving like permission to these people to come back to you, or by you recognizing that what you're going through is so difficult that people around you also feel that, and they too have never been through this. Just like it's sometimes new to us to go through this experience. So I think that's brilliant.
Well, and it's interesting because I was just speaking at Roger Nielsen House this week, and I got asked about friendships. And are they gone forever? And how do you navigate this? You really want people to step up, and you're so hurt and you're so disappointed. And everything you just said is that you have to give people their space. Like, you ask people to give you your space.
Yeah.
You can't tell other people how to step up in your life for you if you don't want them to tell you how to grieve. There might be other things going on in their life that they aren't at a space that they can share. They might be newly pregnant when we were telling everyone we had just lost them, and it might scare the bejesus out of them. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I get asked those questions, I say giving people acts of service that are of value to you allows them to tangibly do something. So that might be, you've got a family member who is really negatively reacting to something. and they say, well, what can I do to help? I live far away. I live in another city. I want to help, but what can I possibly do? You can start a team. You can start a team for the Butterfly Run, or for the Canadian Cancer Society, or for whatever the issue is that has caused this trauma in your life. Give people a date or a walk or a run as something that they can shift the focus to and make a memorial of, as opposed to, well, I don't know what to say, so I'm going to say nothing. Give them somewhere to focus their energy. If
great.
Your neighbor comes over and says, I just want to give you a hug, can I go to the grocery store for you? Say yes.
If you need that, absolutely use those supports.
Everybody needs toilet paper and toothpaste. Absolutely, you can go to the grocery store for me. It might be really uncomfortable for them to talk to you and support you in your darkest days, which is going to also potentially be really disappointing for you. But try to give yourself some grace and give them some grace, that these will circle back around.
Right.
But everybody's going to deal with this hard time in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned through the Butterfly Run has been, it's such a point of community, but for people that you wouldn't expect. Coworkers donating to Team Carter. It was incredible to get the emails of people saying, I've had no one to talk to about this. Can my family and I join Team Carter as walkers? We'd love to be there on the day with you guys. We've also suffered some losses. Absolutely. And it's instantly, there's more people in my community that understand me and
connecting
my family.
To you. Yeah,
absolutely. And to see the teams that were at last year's run were so incredible, because you've got the family, you've got the friends. I mean, one of our directors had her daycare providers were on their team. It was just amazing. So
amazing.
It allows that community
sense
to
of
grow.
Community.
Yeah.
So Julia, just looking at time, and I know Julia came out of her working day to meet with me, and I'm so incredibly thankful. Thank you. For anybody who's listening to this, who may be pregnant, like you said, or who may have just had a loss of anybody, could be a child, but could also be a loved one. What would be any one or two or three things, one to five? What would be some of your biggest recommendations to these people listening as they're grieving? What do you think has been or was? You mentioned several things throughout the interview here today. And thinking back, if you can just say, I think that anybody who's grieving should read this book, or should go see this person, or should something that you feel was essential to you, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say to first and foremost, nurture yourself. Don't judge yourself for it. Don't think of what I should be capable of doing today. I should be able to go to the grocery store. I should be back at work. I should be in this space by now. I should be over this event. Just nurture yourself and go with your own timeline. There is no timeline for healing your heart or your spirit, regardless of what outside stresses might happen. For somebody who's going through a loss similar to mine, or is just newly pregnant after a loss similar to mine, I would say give both yourself and your partner at home some grace, that there's nobody who's going to walk this journey with you that understands it any more than the person holding your hand at home. And that is a tough road. It's hard to both be in a space of despair, of sadness, of worry. So in those moments, try to take a breath and really try to remember that you're in this together, and hang on to whoever that support is at home for you. And then lastly, I would say, if there's any spectrum of just you're having a hard go in this season right now, is that this isn't going to feel like this forever. And I would encourage you and support you to move your body in whatever feels right for you. If you find joy in walking first thing in the morning, if you find joy listening to music, sitting alone in a candlelit room, whatever it is that you can find some peace in, I would encourage you to do it and move your body, because you will sleep. And when you sleep, your mind can rest and you'll drink more water if you move your body, and let your body start to heal while you worry about the rest of you. But yeah, I would just really encourage people to take good care of themselves, but also know that the season will pass. It may not get easier, but it will never be this hard again.
That's an amazing point. I love nurturing.
Yeah.
because I think that it's a point that we can all relate to, and it's just about nurturing the mind, the body, the heart, the soul in the best of ways. On that note, thank you for nurturing my podcast and our listeners by sharing your beautiful story. Thank you for having taken your personal story and making something fantastic out of it and offering support to all the other people out there who need it. Like as part of this community, I think that we're so lucky to have people like you who don't let this painful experience define them, but they make something good out of it. And I think the world of people like yourself. I think the world of you and your husband. I think is so amazing, and that your children are very lucky to have you.
Well, that's so kind of you to say, and thank you for your support of our community. You were one of the first people who signed up to help us with the butterfly runs, so thank you.
My heart is definitely set in this subject. I think that much more can be done by the community, and I am a big fan of talking about subjects that people are allergic to talk about, because we gotta go there. We have to talk about the difficult things so that they don't, so that they're less difficult. They're more normal. Like you said, there's 1 in 4 Canadians, that is, who are experiencing the loss of a child. That's huge. That's a huge number.
Yeah, it's 1 in 4 is pregnancy loss. So miscarriage, infertility, infant loss, stillbirth. We need to have the conversation. It's an uncomfortable conversation. We need to have these conversations.
Happening, right? Like, it's happening, so we may as well just face it.
Absolutely.
Julia, is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners if people wanted to get a hold of the Ottawa Butterfly Run? What is the best way to access the resources? Could they get a hold of you if they wanted to? What do you think is best to
Absolutely. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we've got a website. So Ottawa Butterfly Run on all 3 platforms. Okay. I'm Miss Julia Windslow on Instagram. Please reach out to us. We would love to connect with community partners. We would love to see everybody at our run walk. Mm-hmm. This year, you don't need to be a runner to come. We've even got a 1K turnaround, so you're good. But we would really love to see everybody there. And I would say our Facebook page has the most community information. So if you're looking for ways to connect into a bigger community, or you're looking for information in terms of any of the topics that we cover, we put up as many blogs and
okay. So this could be helpful to listeners who are not in Ottawa.
Absolutely, okay. Yes, for sure.
Resources,
and there's lots of regional across the country. Actually, there's a Vancouver Butterfly Run starting for the first time this year. So if
you're growing,
it's a national thing. So look up your local butterfly run, and if you want to start a butterfly run in your community, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you with the process.
That's awesome. That's really great. If you guys found these podcasts helpful and you think you know of other people who may benefit from it, please don't hesitate to share it. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. And you can always find me on Facebook at Olga's Way, or you can join my private Facebook group at The Happiness Dealer, where you will find a lot of good resources for free. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Julia, for coming here today. Really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking your own time to do this. I appreciate it. And you guys already know where to get a hold of her or myself. I can't wait to see you next. Ciao.